Archie Marshall, known under the alias of King Krule, is one of the most important artists in my life, with all of his albums meaning so much to me and really contributing to my love for songwriting. Archie has had a really interesting career in my opinion, finding success at a very young age, releasing his debut album at 19, but still receiving much critical praise before that with singles like Out Getting Ribs. But what's especially interesting to me about this is his longevity, as it's been a decade since his debut and he's still as relevant as ever, still releasing phenomenal music to an ever-growing fanbase. So in this video, I'm going to be examining the mastery of Archie Marshall's work by going through his 4 albums under the King Krule name.
I still feel the pain of you not loving me the same.
6 Feet Beneath the Moon is Archie's debut record and really what catapulted him into the music world. I'd like to begin talking about this record by first giving an explanation to the title 6 Feet Beneath the Moon. I feel the best way to explain the title is just to use Archie's own words, so here's how he explained it in an interview with Interview magazine. That's about being 6 feet beneath your aspirations. You look up to the moon. It's your goal. It's your target. It's what you will look up to. And feeling just submerged, almost in a coffin 6 feet down by your aspirations. It's about feeling lost and constantly trying to look up, but constantly feeling 6 feet beneath whatever you aspire to do. 6 Feet Beneath the Moon sonically really feels like you're beneath the moon, with the whole record having this really dark and nocturnal feel. This is done with a common combination throughout the album of spacey guitar paired with Archie's heavily reverberated vocals. This album also has a lot more hip-hop influence than any other King Krule record, with having many tracks that are more or less entirely jazz rap tracks like A Lizard State, or tracks with hip-hop drum loops like Ceiling or Neptune State. Though there were tracks that took hints of hip-hop influence on following King Krule records, there's never another record with this much rap influence. Now to dig into the tracks on this album, I'd like to start with the iconic opening track of the record, Easy Easy, that Archie had written when he was 12. Easy Easy is an anecdotal song from Archie of his observations of adult life as a 12-year-old, and the misery that comes with it for some. But before this track gets into this main theme, it opens talking about how the police run down Archie and his friends while they're on their daily patrols. This then leads into the line, "An easy come and easy go," which is talking about the repetitive nature of the average working class adult life, contextualizing the purpose of mentioning the police patrol, with it being an example of the boring and repetitive life that most people live. From here, it further explains the boring and repetitive life lived by most adults.
Well, your dead job has been eating away your life. You feel little inside, but trouble and strife.
Another interpretation of the song that I've seen is that the whole song is Archie talking to a cop, which would very much also make sense, as if you consider the chorus with the lines, "Well, easy, easy, there's no need to take that tone, well, easy, I'm on the telephone, man, just leave us alone," which could very well be Archie telling the cops to back off, as he's done nothing wrong. The next track I want to talk about is Cementality, and this track is about killing yourself. More specifically, jumping to your death and becoming one with the cement. You're immediately faced with this dark topic, with the first lines on the track being,
See, the cement has never meant so much. My heart head cools to the stone cold touch.
The cement is a symbol for death, and the cement has never meant so much, as his suicidal thoughts have never been this intense. Following this, he describes how his head cools with the touch of the cement as he's jumped, leading to his death, losing the warmth that his body emits. Alternatively, this hot head could be referring to his worries, depression, etc., and how suicide would rid him of these emotions. Throughout the rest of the track, it continues to talk of the cement, referring to it as his bed, his final resting place. This is shown in lines such as, "Enter my bed through that window." Later in the track, it also introduces the person who seems to have driven Archie to this place of suicidal thoughts. Alternatively, this line could be referring to a group of people, society as a whole, or many other things, rather than one individual. The track then ends talking about his suicide in a positive light, saying it'd be soothing and would relieve Archie of all his fear and pain, until returning to the haunting chorus for a final time. The final track I want to talk about off 6 Feet Beneath the Moon is Out Getting Ribs. Out Getting Ribs is a beautiful song about a relationship falling apart with a melody that is ingrained in my mind for its sheer memorability and beauty. Lyrically, this track is one of Archie's strongest lyrical performances on this record, having a haunting disparity carried through the track that captivates me every time. The track opens with the lines,
Hate runs through my blood. Well, my tongue was in love.
Which is Archie saying that though he has so much hatred and distaste for this girl, he can't help but be in love with her, despite the knowledge of knowing that she's bad for him. Later in this verse, Archie says, "I never thought I'd be shot down, but girl, I'm black and blue, so beaten down for you," further cementing this idea that this girl is pushing him down and only making his life so much worse. Then later in the following verse, it reveals another aspect of the relationship, that being abuse. "Well, I had no chance to get away, I can't escape my own escape. even more when it's sweet to the taste. This explains how Archie had used drugs as an escape and now he's addicted, leading him to not be able to escape his own escape. And due to this issue in his life, it's harder for him to let go of the relationship. Alternatively, this escape could be referring to the girl herself, and this girl originally being an escape from his struggles until becoming another toxic problem in his life, trapping him. The song then closes with a third verse that brings a name into the picture, that name being Blue. This obviously connects to the earlier track on the album, Baby Blue. Baby Blue is a song about Archie feeling that there's a disconnect between him and this girl, Blue, with him feeling that the care he's giving her is not mutual. So narratively, Out Getting Ribs could be a continuation of this story, showing that the relationship had only gone downhill from here, from a lack of communication into downright toxic, with his final request simply being that he needs to rest. Alternatively, Blue could be referring to a depression that Archie is feeling and that he needs a break from the constant sadness if the relationship is to work. See, this could be the best, but Blue, I need rest. This interpretation would also make much sense as Blue and Girl seem to be referred to separately on the track, and the girl is told at the end of the track not to worry about him, most likely referring to this blue he's feeling, this depression. Though a little more rough around the edges than the King Krule records that came after, 6 Feet Beneath the Moon is still a phenomenal record from Archie, having some beautiful storytelling along with intriguing production and iconic riffs.
And as the sea of darkness forms and casts us into night, you asked me what our name was called, but I found it hard to write.
The Ooze feels much more raw, authentic, and original than 6 Feet Beneath the Moon, drawing inspirations from a million different places, from hip-hop influences to punk, all while maintaining a feeling of grimy darkness throughout the whole hour and 6 minutes of the record. This feeling of grimy darkness is really elevated by the use of lots of horns on this project, which is the work of Ignacio Salvadores, who's a saxophonist Archie met in 2016 while recording the Ooze. Since then, Ignacio has played a pretty big part in creating all of Archie's albums. Also, me praising the Ooze like this isn't me talking down on 6 Feet Beneath the Moon at all, as I have so much love for this project as you saw in the last section. It's just this album feels more grown up, mature, and really thought about than the last. Once again, that's not me calling 6 Feet Beneath the Moon immature, simply the Ooze to me just feels more mature than its predecessor. Now I'd like to talk about the title of the record, The Ooze. I just absolutely love all of Archie's album titles. They always perfectly encapsulate the project in just a few words. What the Ooze means metaphorically, or rather what the Ooze is the process of releasing things and just letting it all ooze out of you, whether that be emotions, thoughts, or something else. Archie compares it to the natural process of the human body in an interview with New York Times. You go to sleep and your nails grow, you get boogies, your hair, your teeth. You've got to refine it every day. Now that we know what the name means, where did it come from? The name The Ooze went through many evolutions before reaching the title used for the album. Originally, the name came to Archie when he was a teenager, and his old band Zoo Kid, and his brother's band Words Backwards, combined, forming Dick Ooze, which if you haven't figured out is Zoo Kid backwards. Following this, in 2014, Archie and his brother created an art exhibit, Inner City Ooze, which then finally led into the simplified name, The Ooze. From here, I feel the most obvious topic to transition into is the title track of the album, The Ooze, further expanding on this idea of the ooze. On the track, Archie talks about a heavy loneliness weighing down on him. So due to this, he searches for someone that relates to his sadness, so they can comfort each other in this mutual feeling of sadness, so they can emotionally ooze into each other. We ooze, two souls, pastel blues. The title track begins with a spoken word intro that contains a callback to a track earlier on the album, Locomotive. It talks about a sadness same as the one depicted in the title track by using a metaphor of a train. This callback in the title track is a woman saying, "The locomotive has arrived," while simultaneously Archie asks, "Is anybody out there?" Meaning that the sadness/dread has arrived via the locomotive, and now Archie searches for company in this sadness. Along with the spoken word intro, there's also a spoken word outro that is a continuation of the intro's spoken word piece. This outro, in a metaphorical way, describes how this person that Archie was with comforting him eventually left him, shown most vividly in the line, "She pushes me off." But this whole section of the poem describes this exit, so I'll read out a bigger part of it. She weeps, her sweet sting, bleeding perfume perpetually. It overflows, it sinks. It drips in obnoxious ink, on streets and clothes. She leaps, she limps, tense liquid herbivore, cannibal pacifier. She pushes me off, it's cold by the fire. I want to specifically highlight the final line, "It's cold by the fire," which I find to be an absolutely beautiful line. What I interpret this line to mean is a way of describing the one-sidedness he feels in relationships in his life, leading to a cold isolation/loneliness. There's one last thing I want to mention about the title track. That is the live version from Archie's live album, You Heat Me Up, You Cool Me Down, which is how I had initially heard the track, and I'm pretty sure is one of the first King Krule tracks I ever heard, which was just a great introduction to him. As though the studio version is already great, the mix on the live version, in my opinion, is way better, along with a great vocal performance from Archie. The next track I want to talk about is the opening track to the Ooze, Biscuit Town. Archie really has a thing for opening tracks in that he always makes them hit so hard, and Biscuit Town is no expectation. This track takes a hip-hop approach, especially on the drums, but also somewhat in Archie's delivery, which is nothing new for Archie, as he's done this with his record A New Place to Drown under his government name, but also with other King Krule tracks such as A Lizard State off his debut. Despite this, Biscuit Town feels really fresh and new for Archie, with some really interesting sounds along with amazing writing. I just absolutely love the writing on this track, as it does exactly what an opening track should do. That being setting the stage / setting the tone of the record. How Biscuit Town does this is by describing where Archie had been spending his time while creating this record. That place being Biscuit Town, which is a nickname for the town Bermondsey in London, England. While this track sets the physical scene of the Ooze, it also lays down the themes of the record. In my opinion, the best example of this is in the line, "I seem to sink lower." That is a line Archie really wants you to pay attention to, as it's included in a very brief chorus, and on top of that is the opening line of the album as a whole. This line is very obviously Archie describing himself sinking deeper and deeper into this depression that was talked about on the aforementioned title track of the record. Biscuit Town not only talks about his depression, but also seems to be a song talking about presumably a girlfriend, ex, or friend explaining how they don't understand how he feels / sees things. This is most vividly shown on the second verse.
Your shallow waters, I'm the deep sea bed, and I'm the reason you flow. I got my moons wrapped around my head, and Jupiter knows, whilst you orbit with some stupid hoes.
With Archie calling this person shallow emotionally and intellectually, along with saying that they surround themselves with people who are shallow just like them. Something else I really love about this track is not only the writing, but also the delivery that absolutely elevates the lyrics, with Archie really sounding like he's a strong distaste for this person. Alternatively, this could be referring to a distaste for society as a whole, rather than one person, but written in a way where it addresses an individual for the sake of storytelling. The next track I would like to talk about is Half Man, Half Shark, which is my personal favorite from the album. With it containing the most infectious bassline I've ever heard, paired with great energy coming from Archie on the vocal end of things. Though at times this track lyrically can be pretty abstract and just generally vague, I'll still try to explain my interpretation of the track. Just like all the aforementioned tracks on the Ooze, Half Man, Half Shark is also about depression, this feeling of emptiness that Archie has been experiencing. More specifically, how he feels that no one understands his depression and that they're in a better place than him, leading to Archie being jealous of everyone else, who is seemingly happy. This envy to not live in misery is most clearly shown in the outro of the track, with lines such as, "At least when you look at the stars they still glow. Well, not for me though." Then also on the following lines, with him talking about that though people around Archie are physically in the same place, mentally they are in different worlds. Body and head are empty, even when we're toe to toe. Well, I suppose I'll forever be the only one who knows. Aspirations ingrown, I'll forever be alone. Further enforcing this theme of depressive disconnection Archie has been feeling. Then for examples of Archie talking about people not caring / not understanding his problems, this line in the bridge perfectly showcases this feeling. And if you don't know and if you don't care, don't try to hide it, you're not even there. One last thing I want to mention about this track's lyrics that I found pretty interesting but off topic was something someone pointed out on a genius annotation for the track. That being that this line from the bridge, could be a reference to the Spike Lee movie Do the Right Thing, specifically the character Radio Raheem, with the "I've only got two fighting hands" line supposedly being a reference to Raheem's rings that on one hand said love and the other said hate. To explain the meaning of the love and hate rings, I'll quote the genius annotation, as I don't think I could describe it any better. Raheem describes a conceptual struggle between love and hate using fighting hands, and acknowledges that it's only when love is able to conquer hate that people are able to get together and achieve clarity. And I know that line is almost definitely not like a reference to the movie, but I just think thematically it's a really interesting connection. The final track I want to talk about off the Ooze is Emergency Blimp, which used to be my favorite track off the record until Half Man, Half Shark recently grew on me. Emergency Blimp feels like it's filled with so much frustration and angst. And not only the vocal aspect of things, but also the instrumental feels so grimy, just perfectly matching the feelings portrayed by the vocals. Along with this, the lyrics also match this emotion felt in the song, being on vaguely the same topic as the aforementioned track Half Man, Half Shark, with the track once again talking about people having a lack of understanding for Archie's problems. But instead of in a social sense of his friends, it's talking medically, with Archie's doctors having a lack of understanding for his issues. The track begins talking about this lack of communication, with lines describing how the doctor had prescribed Archie sleeping pills, but that the pills aren't working for him, as shown in the next line of the verse. It also talks about how the medications his doctor prescribed him make him feel idle, complacent, and just generally feel nothing, as many drugs dealing with mental illness can do. From here, it talks about the lack of understanding the doctor has for Archie, as he complains how the pills aren't working, but instead of trying to find a solution, the doctor just prescribes more. The track then ends with the same line it started with, "No help still, representing how the doctor did not help him at all, and he's still in the same place he was before he started taking the pills. The Ooze used to be my least favorite King Krule record, and I thought it was too messy and unfocused, but as I have returned to this record relatively recently, I've started to gain such a love for this project, with it becoming one of my favorite King Krule records. It just shows so much mastery from Archie in every aspect of music, having amazing instrumentation, songwriting, and vocal performances. Not only this, but he also performs his skill in so many different interesting styles and genres never seen before from him, making this record an artistically powerful and expressive project that I have so much love for.
Battlefield, consume it, then let it go. But don't forget you're not alone.
King Krule's 2020 record, Man Alive, is in my opinion severely underrated, at least in contrast to the love that all his other records get. Man Alive displays what sounds like to me a much more mature Archie, and with that a more refined and developed sound. I know I also said this about the Ooze, but every record does really feel like Archie has grown as a person and an artist, making for a uniquely intriguing record every time. Man Alive is the only King Krule record I have on vinyl at the moment, and I think having this record on vinyl has really elevated the experience for me, with Archie crafting these soundscapes that are really meant to be heard on vinyl. Like especially the riff heard on the opening track Cellular just absolutely transports me to another world whenever I hear it on vinyl. Man Alive doesn't have much of an overarching theme in comparison to his record before, with Archie saying in an interview with Time Out, "I don't think too conceptually, and I write down what feels right at that moment in time." With this, it makes Man Alive feel beautifully vulnerable and specific, with every song really feeling like a specific moment in time for Archie, making each track feel like an audio picture taken of that moment. This really adds to the beauty of the album for me, at least personally, as all the tracks feel so specific to where I can personally connect each track to something in my life, making me personally resonate with Man Alive more than any other King Krule record. Despite Man Alive having a less developed theme than King Krule records prior, it doesn't at all feel unfocused, messy, or distracted, keeping a pretty consistent atmosphere that is held together by some really smooth transitions between tracks. The transitions on this album are really great and what really bring the album together for me, with some tracks even feeling like continuations of the last, making the project feel very cohesive despite the lack of specific theme. I think my personal favorite transition is Perfecto Miserable into Alone Omen 3, with it using the beeping of a phone to transition between the two tracks seamlessly. The first track I want to dive into is my personal favorite off the record, that being Alone Omen 3, named after the third movie in the Omen trilogy. It's named after the movie as when Archie was finishing the song, he was watching the movie. Anyways, for what the track talks about. Following the track Perfecto Miserable, which talks about a person Archie finds comfort in, Alone Omen 3 is Archie trying to be that comfort for another person. This person is most likely his daughter, who had recently been born. The track begins with Archie explaining how you really don't need to worry about things, and you should just try to enjoy life, with him encouraging exploration of the world around you and letting the world take you places. Take a dip if you're alone, take your time, take a ticket, take the train to the end of the line. See where you can go. You spent it, it's plastic, no do or die. I absolutely adore the no do or die line, as it's a really interesting perspective Archie has. A perspective of embracing the inimportance of life from a positive perspective, rather than the commonly negative one that troubles so many people existentially. The track then continues with this theme until slightly shifting in the third verse, where he tries to comfort his daughter with the repeating of the line, "You're not alone." The delivery of this line on the outro just giving me absolute chills every time I hear it. There's just so much passion in his voice that you can hear pouring out so much love.
You're not alone, 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 you're not alone.
The next track I want to talk about is Stoned Again, which was the first track recorded for Man Alive, being recorded all the way back in 2016, which makes a lot of sense while listening to it, as it sounds like it'd fit perfectly in the track list for the Ooze, with it having this really grimy sound paired with super angsty vocals from Archie. For the lyrical end of the track, Stoned Again is obviously a track about Archie getting high, specifically calling back to his teenage years, where between the lines about him getting high, he adds anecdotes of his adolescence. The writing can be quite sporadic and nonsensical at times, with lines seemingly being there just simply for the fact that they sound good. For example, the lines "ain't allowed in the park, exiled, couldn't even do one keepy uppy." But also at the same time, the sporadic nature of the songwriting could be a representation of Archie's adolescence, where he was manic and sporadic. Despite this relatively messy nature of the track's songwriting, it's definitely still possible to pick out themes in this track. Getting high is very much talked about from a negative perspective on this track, which you can already gauge from his delivery of the line "I'm stoned again," where he sounds very passionately angry. You can also find this sentiment in many lines, such as the line "I'm low again," immediately following "I'm stoned again," which shows that getting stoned makes Archie feel low, but despite this he continues to do it over and over. This negative/low feeling is also talked about at the end of the verse, with Archie talking about how he doesn't really like weed, but he smokes it anyways. Underclass is a very smooth jazz rock track, and I think one of the softest tracks that Archie has ever made. This track is lyrically pleasantly soft in the same way it is instrumentally, with the track detailing Archie's relationship with his partner Charlotte Patmore, and how he's changed for the better since meeting her and bringing their daughter into the world. Along with this, around the beginning of the track, there's a sentiment of doubt if committing to a relationship is what he wants, shown in lines such as "keep my head up above your intimacy" or "steadily, your putrid ooze would swallow me," which is Archie worrying that the relationship would swallow him whole, completely taking himself away from other things in his life. This is then followed by the line "is it meant to be," which is obviously Archie opening the possibility that this relationship is what he wants while still being doubtful. This narrative is then continued with the lines "and find me, those big sad eyes, I lay down on the empty streets, the road seems to lead to you," where Archie realizes that all he wants is to be with this person, that all paths in life lead to her. Near the end of the track, he seems to finally come to terms with this in the lines "the numb, it gonna spread through me, girl, let the fire grow cold, and prepare that bed for me, yeah, I'm under your control." While that final line, "I'm under your control," seems like a negative thing, it's really not. As what Archie really means by this is that he's finally committing to the relationship. Alternatively, you could connect it to the aforementioned line, "your putrid ooze would swallow me," and how he's finally come to terms with being submerged and oozing into the person, letting them be in control. To close off the section on Man Alive, I'd like to talk about not a song, but instead a short film that accompanied the release of the album, Hey World. Hey World is a 15-minute short film by Archie and his partner Charlotte Patmore that showcases many stripped-down acoustic versions of tracks that would later be fully realized on the album. These acoustic tracks are all performed outside, with Archie usually playing guitar backed by a beautiful background, with my favorite being a performance of Alone Omen 3 where he performs backed by a gigantic smokestack. Man Alive is, I think, my favorite King Krule record, with some of Archie's most passionate performances like on Stoned Again, along with some of my favorite writing from him, especially on the beautiful track Alone Omen 3. Coming nearly a decade after his debut, Space Heavy really feels like a victory lap for the King Krule name, with Archie for the fourth time delivering a phenomenal album with new and interesting ideas while once again maturing forward as a person and artist. Just like Man Alive, Space Heavy also feels much more focused than his two projects before, having a clean and concise tracklist. Archie speaks on this in an interview with The Standard. There was lots of pain in trying to construct something in a lot of the other records. With this one, maybe it was because I had a change of lifestyle with my daughter, and then there was a moment where we were playing the best we were ever playing. I had so much creative energy at that point, and I had so much clarity. I was able to marry all the elements that I liked about my songwriting, and I was able to put them more cohesively into that place for myself. The decisions were really clear, and I stuck to them. I found a lot of strength in that. The first track I'd like to talk about off Space Heavy is the opening track to the record, Flimsier. Flimsier opens with an amazing showcase of Archie's guitar mastery, with his dreamy and extremely memorable guitar riff that takes center stage until drifting off and fading into the main structure of the song. Flimsier talks about a familiar subject to many other King Krule songs, that subject being of relationship falling apart. My favorite way this song talks about this relationship is in the chorus, and when the night bleeds, it could love me forever. This is explaining how the relationship was formed from pain, leading to the two people feeling this pain together, bleeding together, creating this codependency. This leads to the lines, maybe that's why, won't work, it don't work, which reveals that this codependency, this mutual wallowing in pain, doesn't work. I especially love the specification of "it don't work," saying that it's not the relationship only recently turned bad, but instead it always has been broken and dysfunctional due to its codependent nature. These lines are then followed by the final two lines of the chorus, "my eyes were popping out of sockets onto open chests," which I find to be a beautiful way to describe this broken relationship, with Archie's eyes being his emotions, thoughts, distresses, etc. that are all being let out to this person with an empty chest, with no heart. This heartlessness is obviously a symbolization of someone being emotionally unavailable. This chorus is then followed by the bridge that repeats the line, "it's been holding the weight of the world," which is the listener's introduction to the theme of weight and space that will be seen on various later tracks of the album. The last thing I want to talk about to do with Flimsier is its connection to two other tracks on Space Heavy, those tracks being Flimsy and Our Vacuum. The connection between these two tracks is the reuse of the melody from Flimsier, creating a musical callback of sorts. I really love when artists have these motifs in albums that can really tie together an album thematically. Another track with a similar theme of a broken relationship is Hamburgerphobia. This track is definitely the highest energy track on this generally mellow album, having a sporadic and paranoid feeling with these insane drums paired with these off-the-wall vocals from Archie. The first verse of the track is an intriguingly odd story of paranoia told by Archie about how he went to go pick up a hamburger and eat it at the park. Then while at the park, he began to fear that the birds in the park were going to eat his brains. This is his hamburgerphobia. This is then followed by a much more sensical second verse that speaks about a broken relationship, opening with the line, "my love returned to me." You don't deserve to be deserving me. You're just a waste of space. This is then followed by Archie saying that though it hurt to hear, he does believe it to be true. This is followed by the lines, "She kicked me out of the car to heavy traffic in my brain," being a figurative way of saying that this person dumped Archie, causing him lots of stress, further solidified by the following line, "And it rains and it pours all over and over again." The remainder of the verse explains various effects the relationship had on him, such as disassociation. The track is then closed with a refrain of the word Hamburgerphobia, concluding that this Hamburgerphobia, this paranoia that Archie has developed, was due to this relationship. The next track I want to talk about is my definite favorite from Space Heavy, and I think one of my favorite King Krule songs of all time, if not my favorite King Krule song of all time. That is the title track for Space Heavy. The title track talks about Archie suppressing his emotions and refusing help from others due to that. This track begins with Archie talking about how he's having trouble letting go of past relationships and how this person randomly appears in his mind all the time. "I had not thought about it. She appears from nothing, out of the blue." This is then followed by the second verse, which figuratively explains his state of misery and his lack of will to change / get help, instead just wallowing in it, or as said in the song, slurping it up. After this, Archie then explains how this person from this past relationship offered and advocated to help him, but he stayed closed in, refusing to be saved, continuing to slurp down the lake of misery through his plastic straw. He used the idea of a plastic straw to build an absolutely insane refrain that ultimately climaxes in this riff that gives me absolute chills every time I hear it. The track then swiftly calms into an outro that repeats the remark, "very sensitive men," which is saying how sensitive / fragile men can be, especially due to the suppression of emotions, leading to a lot of men having issues of lashing out and things of that sort, rather than dealing with their problems in a healthy way. The final track I want to talk about of Space Heavy is From the Swamp. Like the aforementioned title track, From the Swamp also deals with the topic of emotional suppression, using the metaphor of a swamp as a representation for a place of negativity in his head. It shows that he suppresses all these thoughts and feelings from the swamp in the line, "But if it's from the swamp, then back it goes." Also, just like the title track, From the Swamp also tells the story of someone trying to reach out and help Archie, but him rejecting it even though he really needs it. This is presented by Archie in the first verse, where he begins speaking about issues he has, such as insomnia, which then leads into him talking about how this person would always ask him what's wrong. It then talks about needing to forget this person because they are from the swamp, which seems to be a very similar situation to the one talked about on the title track, of this person who tried to help them, but he did not allow. Now he has lost that person and cannot stop thinking of them. This theme then carries into the second verse, further emphasizing the swamp metaphor, saying that he doesn't want to allow this person to run through his head and all his emotions. Whether this be through Archie constantly thinking about this person, having them figuratively be in his head, or through Archie telling this person about his emotions that he's repressed for so long, letting the person into his head in a more literal sense. Space Heavy is another phenomenal record from Archie, and really just continues to show that he's really working and refining his sound every time he releases. But not only his sound, but also his songwriting, with this record having some beautifully intriguing and mature topics written into it.
I think we might be bipolar. I think she thinks I'm bipolar.
King Krule, I think, has one of the most consistent discographies of all time, with a decade full of phenomenal albums. Every single one of these records means so much to me personally, and have honestly changed me as a person. Especially while making this video, reading all these interviews, analyzing all these lyrics, it's honestly changed the way that I approach art and life as a whole.